Ghostwriter of My Heart, written by Tane Blackadder. Erica Mills sat at her desk, staring at the blank screen of her laptop. The cursor blinked mockingly, a silent reminder of her failure to produce anything worthwhile in weeks. The rain outside tapped against the window, a steady rhythm that usually soothed her, but tonight it felt like a taunt. Her apartment was quiet, save for the occasional hum of the refrigerator or the creak of the old building settling. The silence was suffocating. She sighed, running a hand through her disheveled hair. The stack of rejection letters on the corner of her desk seemed to grow taller every day, each one a dagger to her already fragile confidence. She had dreamed of being a writer since she was a child, crafting stories in her notebook, during class and staying up late to read under the covers with a flashlight. But now, at 28, she was beginning to wonder if it was all a foolish fantasy. Her phone buzzed, snapping her out of her thoughts. It was a text from her landlord, reminding her that rent was due in 3 days. Erica groaned, leaning back in her chair. Her part-time job at the bookstore barely covered her bills, and her savings were dwindling fast. She had always told herself that she would make it as a writer, that her big break was just around the corner. But the rejections kept coming, and the well of inspiration had run dry. Just as she was about to give up and crawl into bed, the sound of the mail slot clinking open caught her attention. She frowned, glancing at the clock. It was past 9 p.m., far too late for the mail to be delivered. Curious, she got up and walked to the door, where a single envelope lay on the mat. It was plain, with no return address, just her name written in elegant, looping handwriting. She picked it up, turning it over in her hands. The paper felt heavy, expensive, and there was a faint scent of lavender. Her heart skipped a beat as she opened it, pulling out a single sheet of paper. The letter was handwritten, the same beautiful script as the envelope. As she began to read, her breath caught in her throat. Dear Erica, I've watched you from afar for so long, admiring the way you pour your heart into every word you write. I know the weight of your dreams, the ache of your doubts, and the fire that still burns within you, even when it feels like the world is trying to extinguish it. You are not alone in this struggle, though I know it often feels that way. Your words have touched me in ways I cannot fully explain, and I wanted you to know that your voice matters, even when you can't hear it yourself. Erica's hands trembled as she read the letter again, her mind racing. Who could have written this? It wasn't signed, and the handwriting wasn't familiar. The words were intimate, poetic, and eerily accurate. They spoke to her deepest fears and secret hopes, as if the writer knew her better than she knew herself. She spent the rest of the night pacing her apartment, trying to make sense of it. Could it be a mistake? A prank? But who would go to such lengths to write something so personal, so heartfelt? She considered calling her best friend, Emily, but it was too late, and besides, Emily would probably think she was overreacting. The next morning, Erica woke up with the letter still clutched in her hand. She had fallen asleep on the couch, her mind too restless to find peace in her bed. As she got ready for work, she couldn't stop thinking about the mysterious letter. It was like a puzzle she couldn't solve, a story she couldn't finish. At the bookstore, she tried to focus on her tasks, but her thoughts kept drifting back to the letter. Who could have written it? Was it someone she knew? A stranger? The idea that someone out there understood her so deeply was both comforting and unsettling. That evening, when she returned home, another letter was waiting for her. This one was shorter, but no less poignant. Dear Erica, do you remember the story you wrote in college, the one about the girl who could see people's memories through their shadows? It was raw and imperfect, but it was also beautiful. That story stayed with me long after I read it. I think about it often, especially when I see you struggling to believe in yourself. You have a gift, Erica. Don't let the world convince you otherwise. Erica's heart raced as she read the words. How did this person know about that story? She had only shared it with a few people. and it had never been published. The idea that someone had remembered it all these years was both flattering and unnerving. Over the next few weeks, the letters kept coming. Each one was different, but they all had the same intimate tone, the same deep understanding of who she was. Some were filled with encouragement, others with gentle reminders of her worth. They were like a lifeline, pulling her out of the depths of her self-doubt. But as much as the letters comforted her, they also haunted her. She couldn't shake the feeling that she was being watched, that someone was observing her life from the shadows. She started to notice little things. A figure standing across the street from her apartment. A man in a coffee shop who seemed to be watching her. A car that lingered too long outside the bookstore. Were they all connected to the letters? Or was she just imagining things? One evening, after another long day at the bookstore, Erica decided to take a different route home. She needed to clear her head, to think. As she walked, she found herself passing by the park where she used to write when she was in college. It was quiet, the air crisp with the promise of autumn. She sat on a bench, pulling out the latest letter. It had arrived that morning, and she had been carrying it with her all day, reading it over and over. Dear Erica, I know you're searching for answers, and I wish I could give them to you. But some stories are meant to unfold slowly, one chapter at a time. Trust the process, even when it feels uncertain, and know that no matter what, you are not alone. The words were comforting, but they also left her with more questions than answers. Who was this person? Why were they doing this? And why did their words feel so familiar, as if they had been plucked from her own heart? As she sat there, lost in thought, a man approached the bench. He was tall, with dark hair and a kind smile. He hesitated for a moment before sitting down beside her. "Mind if I join you?" he asked, his voice soft. Erica shook her head, tucking the letter into her bag. "No, go ahead." They sat in silence for a few moments, the only sound the rustling of leaves in the breeze. Then the man spoke again. "I've seen you here before," he said. "You used to come here to write, didn't you?" Erica turned to look at him, surprised. "Yes, I did. How did you know?" He smiled, his eyes warm. "I used to come here too, to read. I always noticed you, sitting under that tree, scribbling away in your notebook. You looked so lost in your own world." Erica felt a shiver run down her spine. There was something about the way he spoke, the way he looked at her, that felt familiar. Could he be the one who had been writing the letters? Before she could ask, he stood up, brushing off his coat. "I should let you get back to your thoughts. It was nice talking to you, Erica." She watched as he walked away, her heart pounding in her chest. How did he know her name? She hadn't told him. And yet, there was something about him that felt right. That night, another letter arrived. Dear Erica, sometimes the answers we seek are closer than we think. Trust your instincts, and don't be afraid to follow your heart. The story isn't over yet. Erica read the letter, her mind racing. Could the man in the park be the one who had been writing to her? Or was it just a coincidence? She didn't know, but for the first time in a long time she felt a spark of hope. The next day, she returned to the park, hoping to see him again. She waited for hours, but he never showed. Disappointed, she was about to leave when she noticed something tucked under the bench where they had sat. It was a small, leather-bound notebook. She picked it up, her hands trembling as she opened it. Inside were pages filled with the same elegant handwriting as the letters. Her heart skipped a beat as she realized what she was holding. It was the ghostwriter's journal. As she flipped through the pages, she found passages about her, about the way she smiled when she was lost in thought, the way her eyes lit up when she talked about her favorite books. There were drafts of the letters, notes about her stories, and even a few sketches of her sitting in the park. Tears filled her eyes as she read, the pieces of the puzzle finally falling into place. The ghostwriter wasn't a stranger or a secret admirer from her past. He was the man from the park, the one who had been watching her all along. And as she closed the journal, she realized something else. The story wasn't over yet. In fact, it was just beginning. Over the next few weeks, Erica and the ghostwriter, whose name was Daniel, began to unravel the mystery of their connection. They spent hours talking in the park, sharing stories and dreams, and slowly falling in love. The letters had brought them together, but it was their shared passion for words that kept them close. Erica's writer's block began to fade, replaced by a flood of inspiration. She started writing again, pouring her heart into a new story, one about a woman who discovers a series of mysterious letters that change her life. It was her most personal work yet, and she knew it was the one that would finally make her dreams come true. As for Daniel, he continued to write her letters, though now they were signed with his name. Each one was a reminder of the love they had found and the journey they had taken to get there. In the end, Erica realized that the ghostwriter of her heart had been there all along, waiting for her to see him. And as she held his hand, watching the sunset in the park where their story had begun, she knew that she had finally found her happy ending. Thank you for listening. Subscribe and click the notification bell so as not to miss the next story.